The sky was red and full of smoke. Fires were rising from the trees. And the ground shook with every explosion. Captain Daron stood at the edge of the broken hill, his face covered in sweat and dust. His team was already heading toward the extraction point, their radios full of shouting voices, "Evac in 5 minutes." The commander's voice said, "Get out now or stay forever." But Daron didn't move. He had seen something on the scanner signal, weak and strange, not human. He looked toward the destroyed alien outpost nearby. His suit's AI said, "Warning, Captain, you are out of mission zone." But Daron ignored it. Something inside him said someone needed help. He took a deep breath, checked his rifle, and moved toward the burning structure. The alien outpost was almost gone. Metal walls were twisted, glass shattered, and strange glowing symbols were broken across the floor. Daron stepped carefully, his boots crunching over ash and wires. Then he heard a sound, soft like a whisper. He turned fast, gun ready. But what he saw stopped him cold. In the corner, under a piece of fallen wall, was a girl. An alien girl. She looked young. Maybe 20 by human guess. Her skin was light blue, and her long silver hair was dirty with blood and dust. She was shaking, her body half covered by debris. One of her legs was clearly broken. Her glowing purple eyes looked up at him, wide. "And afraid, please," she said, barely able to speak. "Go. Leave me. Save yourself." Daron stared at her. She wasn't a soldier, not a threat. She was just someone hurt, someone who didn't want to die alone. For a moment, Daron thought about the order. He could still make it back if he ran. But something inside his chest said no. "No one dies alone today," Daron said quietly. He dropped his rifle, knelt beside her, and started lifting the metal off her leg. The girl screamed in pain but didn't stop him. "Name's Daron," he said. "Captain of the 7th Recon Unit." The girl whispered, "Sailari." Daron nodded. "All right, Sailari, I've got you." He tapped the button on his wrist, and the exoskeleton suit activated, with a click and a whir. The power armor wrapped around him tighter, giving him the strength of 10 men. He lifted her gently, cradling her like a baby in his arms. Her head rested against his chest, her skin cold and wet. "Extraction point is too far now," he said to himself, "so we make our own path." Daron turned and ran back into the jungle. Behind him, the outposts exploded again, sending fire. Into the sky, ahead, the forest waited, dark, deep, and dangerous. But Daron didn't stop. Each step he took was heavy, but the suit helped. The girl didn't speak, but her tears soaked into his armor. It was the beginning of a long journey. A journey through fire, mud, and death. A journey that would test everything he believed. Soon, the jungle closed around them. The light disappeared as trees grew taller and thicker. The ground was wet and soft, full of insects and strange glowing plants. Daron moved carefully, checking his map, but the signal was weak. He was already off the charted zone. "This place isn't on any map," he muttered. The AI replied, "Unregistered territory detected. High danger." Daron kept walking. His legs ached, his throat dry. The girl Sailari opened her eyes and looked up at him. "Why? Why are you doing this?" she asked. Daron smiled tiredly. "Because I'm human," he said, "and humans carry each other." She stared at him for a long second, then closed her eyes again. It wasn't just her body that was broken. Her spirit was tired, as if she had given up long ago. But maybe, just maybe, someone caring could change that. After 3 hours of walking, Daron found a small cave under some thick roots. He laid her down on a dry patch of ground and checked her leg. It was bad swollen and bleeding. He gave her water and used a field med kit to wrap her wound. She winced but didn't complain. "Sleep," he said gently. I'll watch, outside. Strange sounds echoed animal cries, buzzing drones, and rustling leaves. Darren sat at the entrance, holding his rifle now, eyes sharp. The girl slept with her hands close to her chest like a child. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But he had already made his choice. He would carry her no matter what, no matter how far. The night was long, cold, and full of strange sounds. Captain Duran didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the cave, holding his rifle, eyes moving in every direction. The jungle was alive, with danger-glowing insects flew past, and creatures growled in the distance. He stayed quiet, listening, protecting the small form lying behind him. The alien girl, Sailor, was still asleep, breathing slowly. Wrapped in part of his jacket, her leg was swollen, and her skin had turned pale blue from blood loss. But she was alive. That was what mattered. When morning came, the sky was still dark from smoke. The sun was hidden behind thick gray clouds. Darren stood up, stretched his sore muscles, and checked the exosuit's battery. It was already at 63%. He frowned. 3 days in this jungle would push the suit to its limits. Still, he had made a promise, and he wasn't going back on it. Sailari opened her eyes slowly and looked around. She tried to sit up, but groaned in pain. Easy, Daron said, walking to her side. Your leg's broken, remember? She gave him a weak smile. You're still here. Yeah, he said. I told you. I don't leave people behind. There was silence for a moment, only birds calling in the distance. Then she looked at him, her eyes serious. You should have left me, she whispered. I have something inside me. Something dangerous. Duran raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She hesitated, then reached under her shirt and pulled out a small, glowing crystal. It was attached to her chest by tiny wires that pulsed with light. This is a tracker, she said. They put it in me to control me, to find me. Duran took a step back, staring at the device. You mean? Someone's hunting you. Yes, she said. The ones who captured my people, they want this crystal back, and they want me dead. Duran exhaled. Slowly, looking around the jungle again, he now knew why the forest felt so full of eyes. They'll be coming, he said, more to himself than her. Then go, Sailor said quickly. You can still escape if you leave me. Darren looked at her. Really looked at her. Her face was tired, scared. But there was something else, shame, as if she truly believed she was not worth saving. No, he said. I'm not leaving, not now, not ever. She stared at him in disbelief. Why? Why would you risk your life for someone like me? Because you're not the enemy, Duran replied. You're just a girl who got hurt. And humans don't abandon those who need help. She looked away, her eyes wet again. No one has ever said that to me before, she whispered. Then maybe they weren't worth listening to. He answered softly. Darren got to work. He pulled out some old scraps from his survival bag, a small EMP net, a few tools, and a jammer. He studied the crystal device and carefully placed the jammer near it. The signal dropped by 70%. Not perfect, he said, but maybe it'll buy us some time. Solari watched him closely, surprised by how calm and focused he was. He wasn't panicking, he was preparing. Like a soldier ready for war. By afternoon, they began moving again. Darren lifted her gently into his arms, and the exosuit adjusted to the weight. The forest had changed thicker, darker and full of fog. He used his scanner to find a safe path, stepping over sharp roots and avoiding deep holes filled with glowing worms. Every step was slower now, every sound more threatening. But Sailari rested quietly, her head against his chest, eyes watching his face. You're different from what? I thought humans were, she said softly. Oh, Darren replied, dodging a low branch. And what did you think we were? Loud, cruel, warlike, she said. Like the stories they tell us. Darren chuckled. Some of us are loud and some are cruel. Sure, but we're not all the same. You're kind, she said, even when you don't need to be. He smiled at that. Though his body ached, the jungle suddenly grew quiet. Too quiet, Darren froze. He heard a sharp sound, like metal wings cutting through the air. A shadow passed above the trees. Solari's eyes widened. They've found us, she whispered. Darren ducked under thick leaves. Hiding her behind a stone wall covered in moss, he raised his rifle, aiming into the trees. A drone passed overhead, black, fast, and silent, scanning the area the jammer worked for now, but it wouldn't last. They were running out of time. We need to move faster, Darren said, checking his map again. There's an old mining tunnel, 2 clicks from here. Solari said if we reach it, we can hide underground. Darren nodded. Then that's where we go. He lifted her again and started running. Behind them, the drone stopped in the air. Scanned twice, then flew off, but more would come, and next time they wouldn't miss. Darren's jaw tightened. He would carry her all the way, even if it cost him everything, because in that moment she wasn't just a mission, she was his responsibility, and humans protect their own. Captain Darren moved quickly through the thick jungle. His boots splashed in shallow water as vines brushed against his helmet. Each step was heavy. Not just from the exosuit, but from the weight in his arms. Solari was silent now, her head resting. Against his shoulder, her eyes were closed, and her breathing was slow. The pain from her broken leg was getting worse, and her energy was fading fast. But Darren didn't stop. He couldn't. They were heading toward an old mining tunnel, a place Solari remembered from her childhood. It was abandoned years ago. But it might offer shelter now. More importantly, it was deep enough underground to block the tracking signal. The jammer Darren used was already starting to fail, its lights blinking red. They had to get there before the hunters arrived. The jungle around them was changing. The trees grew taller and darker, with wide leaves that blocked the sky. The air was hot and full of buzzing sounds. Darren wiped sweat from his forehead and kept moving. Suddenly, the ground in front of him opened. A giant hole filled with spikes appeared just inches from his foot. He stopped just in time. Trap, he muttered. Staring into the sharp metal tips below, Solari opened her eyes, looked down, and gasped. I told you, she whispered. This jungle is cursed. It remembers war. Darren looked around and saw signs of more traps wires, old sensors, and hidden panels under the soil. Someone had placed them here long ago, probably during the old alien wars. Now, the jungle had grown over them, making everything deadly again. I'll get us through, he said firmly. He shifted her gently in his arms and took a different path. Using his scanner to look for safe ground, hours passed, and the traps kept coming. Some were simple holes, spikes. Nets, others were high-tech invisible lasers, plasma tripwires, even poison gas vents. Darren's suit warned him in time, but the stress was building. He had to stay focused every second. One mistake could kill them both. Once, a flying dart shot out from the side of a tree. It hit the exosuit's shoulder, sparking against the armor. Darren turned fast and fired his rifle into the trees. Just in case something was watching, Solari looked up, frightened. They're not just traps, she said. Some of them are alive. She was right. The jungle had creatures trained to defend territory, bioweapons left behind by old empires. Some looked like plants, but moved like animals. Darren saw one long, green, with claws hidden in its petals. It hissed when they passed but didn't attack. The exosuit's heat shielding must have confused it. They reached a narrow path between 2 giant rocks. On one side, water flowed from a high cliff, forming a small stream. On the other side, sharp roots jutted out like claws. Darren stepped forward. but the ground cracked beneath him. He jumped. Back just in time, holding Sylari tighter, the edge collapsed, revealing another pit trap below. "This one full of acid slime," Sylari whispered. "We're walking through the grave of 1,000 soldiers." Darren didn't reply. He focused on his next move. He tied a rope around a tree and used it to swing them across the broken ground. The suit helped, but his arms were getting sore. Even with the power boost, he was human underneath. And humans get tired. Still, he never let her fall, not even once. As the sun dipped lower, the jungle turned darker. Strange lights glowed between the leaves, blue, green, and red. They weren't fireflies. They were sensors. Scanning devices still active from old times. Diron ducked under them, moving low, careful not to trip any more systems. They were close now, maybe a half-mile from the tunnel. He could feel it. Sylari was slipping into sleep again. Her voice soft and weak. "Why are you still carrying me?" she asked suddenly. "You could move faster without me." Diron looked at her, eyes firm. "You already know why," he said. "You just don't believe it yet." She tried to smile, but it turned into a tear. "No one's ever protected me like this," she whispered. "Even my own people left me behind. Then they were fools." Darren said, stepping over a hidden wire. "Because you're not a burden, Sylari. You're the reason I'm still walking." A moment later, the trees parted, and Diron saw it, a tall rock wall with a hidden metal door covered in vines and moss. It was the entrance to the tunnel. Just like she said, but something wasn't right. The door was open, slightly bent, as if someone or something had forced it before them. He raised his rifle and stepped slowly forward. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "We're almost there, but not safe yet." They entered the tunnel, the air turning cool and damp. Inside was darkness and silence, but at least here there were no traps, no drones, no watching eyes, least for now. Diron found a side room and placed Sylari on an old metal bench. He gave her water, checked her leg, and breathed deeply. For the first time in days, they had a roof over their heads. But the danger wasn't over, not yet. Darren sat by the door, listening carefully. Because something was still out there, and it was hunting them. The tunnel was silent, but Captain Diron didn't rest. His eyes stayed sharp, watching the dark doorway. His hands gripped the rifle tightly, as if danger could walk in at any second. Behind him, Sylari lay on a metal bench. Half asleep, her breathing soft, she looked peaceful. But Diron knew peace was a lie. They were being hunted. And the enemy was close, too close, the moment they entered the tunnel. He had seen the signs, burnt footprints, broken vines, scratch marks on the steel door. Someone had forced their way in before them, and that someone might still be inside. He stood and walked down the hallway, scanning the walls. The lights were dead. But his suit's night vision gave him clear sight. The walls were old, rusted, and covered in ancient alien writing. Some of it looked burned, and some scratched like claws had raked across it. He found a fresh trail boot print. Big ones, too deep for normal weight. That meant exosuits. Just like his own, mercs. He thought, bounty hunters with no hearts and no rules. They had picked up Sylari's trail somehow, maybe through the tracker or the drones. Now they were inside the tunnel system, hunting quietly, patiently, like wolves. Darren returned to Sylari and knelt beside her. "Wake up," he whispered. "We have company." Her eyes opened slowly, fear returning to her face. "They're here?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," he nodded. "And we don't have much time." He helped her sit up and checked her bandages. She was still weak, but she nodded bravely. "I'll walk if I have to," she said. "No," he replied. "You won't. I'll carry you again, but this time we stay low and quiet." They moved carefully through the tunnel. Darren used his flashlight in short bursts. Enough to see, but not enough to be noticed. The air was dusty, filled with old memories of war and fire. Salari pointed toward a narrow side path. "There," she whispered. "That passage leads to the lower chamber. It's safer." He nodded and turned down the side tunnel, his ears listening for footsteps behind them, and then he heard a sound like metal dragging across the floor. Slow and heavy, voices followed, speaking a strange language, harsh and robotic. Mercenaries, at least 3 of them. Their boots clicked on the metal floor, their suits made buzzing noises, and one of them carried a scanner that beeped slowly. Target signal still weak. One said, "But getting stronger, they're close." Another answered, "I can smell the fear." Duran pressed his back to the wall. Holding Salari close, he turned off his suit's external lights and held his breath. The mercs passed just 10 feet away, never looking in their direction. Once they were gone, Duran exhaled slowly. "We don't have long," he whispered. "They'll check every room eventually." They reached the lower chamber, large open space with broken machines and a huge control panel. Duran placed Salari behind a metal crate and gave her his last energy bar. "Eat," he said. "You'll need your strength." She took it with shaking hands and looked up at him. "You don't have to fight them," she said. "If you leave now, you can escape." He smiled at her, but it was a tired smile. "Didn't carry you all this way to run now," he said. "Let them come." He checked his rifle, set up a motion sensor near the entrance, and placed 2 small EMP charges at choke points. His mind was clear: defend, delay, and survive. The first sensor beeped. Someone had entered the chamber above. Heavy footsteps echoed down the tunnel, followed by sharp, clicking sounds. "They're splitting up," Duran said, "trying to corner us." Then the first merc walked in, Tal, armored in black, helmet glowing red. Darun fired, hitting the chest plate, forcing the enemy back. Another came from the side, but the EMP charge went off, and sparks filled the tunnel. The mercs shouted. Now angry, now serious. They didn't expect resistance, but they had it now. Duran moved fast, using crates for cover, firing short bursts, never staying in one place. His suit helped him dodge, jump, and reload quickly. But it wasn't perfect. One shot hit his shoulder, cracking part of the armor. He winced but kept fighting. He had faced worse. One merc tried to grab Salari, but she screamed and swung a broken pipe at his leg. It didn't do much, but it gave Darren time. He tackled the attacker and slammed his head into the ground, knocking him out cold. Only one was left, now the leader, a huge figure with twin plasma blades. He came in like a storm, fast and deadly. Duran blocked one hit, rolled to the side, and fired a grenade round. It exploded in the air, sending both of them flying. Duran hit the wall hard, coughing. The merc leader stood, wounded but still strong. He raised his blade, ready for the final strike. Then a soft light filled the chamber. Salari held the tracker crystal in her hand, glowing brighter than ever before. She pointed it at the merc. Maria? And for a moment, it pulsed with strange power. The merc froze, staring at her, confused and afraid. Then the crystal exploded in light, sending out a shockwave that knocked the merc off his feet. When the light faded, the last merc was gone. The crystal had shattered, and Salari collapsed beside it, unconscious but alive. Dioran ran to her, lifted her up, and held her tightly. "You saved me," he whispered. "You saved us both." He carried her to the back of the chamber, found a sealed room, and locked the door outside. The tunnel was quiet again, but inside, 2 lives had just changed forever. Together, they had survived, and together, they would keep going. The room was quiet, sealed behind thick metal doors. Captain Daron sat on the cold floor, holding Salari in his arms. Her body was light, and her skin had lost most of its color. She had used the last of her strength to destroy the tracker crystal. Now, She was barely breathing. Duran checked her pulse, still there, but slow. He opened his medkit again and gave her a stimulant, something to keep her awake. Her eyelids fluttered, and she let out a weak breath. "You're still here," she whispered. "Course I'm still here," he replied, wiping the sweat from her forehead. "I told you. I'm not going anywhere. They were safe for now, but not for long." The fight with the mercs had damaged his exosuit's power system. One shoulder was cracked, the servos were grinding, and the battery was down to 22%. He wouldn't be able to carry her for much longer. Outside the sealed door, he could still hear faint noises, drones, searching, machines scanning. Maybe more mercs approaching. The jungle above was no longer their biggest threat. Time was. Darren laid Sailori gently against the wall and stood up. His body ached, and his arms felt like stone. Even with the suit, exhaustion was hitting him hard. He hadn't slept in 2 days, and every breath felt heavier than the last. He paced the room, checking supplies. 1 flare, a water pouch, half a ration bar, and a backup battery with only 10% charge. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. But memories flooded in his squad, screaming over the radio, flames in the jungle. And Solari begging him to leave her. He opened his eyes again and stared at her. She had trusted him, and he had promised to get her out. That promise still mattered, even if it killed him. An hour passed, maybe more. The sound outside stopped. But Darren didn't trust the silence. He knelt beside Solari, who now looked up at him with tired eyes. "Is it time to move again?" she asked. "Soon," he nodded. "We're going to the surface, but you can't carry me anymore," she said, her voice low and sad. "You're hurting. I'm not leaving you," he said, "even if I have to crawl." She smiled faintly, a tear slipping from her eye. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "I'm just a broken alien girl." "You're not broken," Darren said. "You're stronger than you think." He looked at his suit again, then made a choice. He opened a small panel on the back and removed the energy booster, one of the suit's final reserves. It was meant to be used in emergencies only. He placed it into the battery slot and powered up the system. The suit hummed louder. Gears. Adjusting lights blinking to life. Now, it had just enough power for one last push. One final escape. He lifted Sailari slowly. The suit struggling but managing to hold her weight. His breath was heavy, his arms trembling. But he didn't stop. He walked back to the door, placed a charge on the lock, and took cover. The door exploded open with a loud boom, dust and smoke. Filling the hallway, Darren stepped out, rifle ready. Eyes scanning, no enemies, just the long, empty tunnel leading back to the jungle entrance. Step by step, he began the final climb. His boots scraped against metal, and sparks flew from his right leg joint. The exosuit was dying. Every 10 steps, it slowed. But he pushed it forward with sheer will. Sweat ran down his face, and his vision blurred. Sailari opened her eyes and saw his pain. "Please," she whispered. "Put me down, just rest." "No," Darren growled. "You are not being left." Behind, they reached the tunnel's end, and sunlight poured in through the cracks, but the entrance was blocked by a fallen tree and chunks of stone. Darren stared at it, breathing hard, his hands curled into fists. He had come too far to stop. Now? He placed Solari down gently and started moving the debris, stone by stone, branch by branch. He cleared a hole just big enough for them to crawl through. His hands bled from sharp edges, and his muscles screamed. But he didn't stop. Once the path was open, he turned to lift her again. His suit gave one last warning, low power. It would shut down soon, and when it did, he'd have to carry her with his own arms. That would be the breaking point, and it came faster than expected. Just as they reached the sunlight, the suit died. The exoskeleton locked up and fell silent. Darren collapsed to his knees, dropping forward, his body shaking. Salari gasped, trying to sit up. "You can't go any farther," she said. "You'll die." Darren looked at her through tired eyes and smiled. "Then I'll die carrying you," he whispered. "Because I made a promise." And somehow, from deep inside, he found one more ounce of strength. He took off the dead exosuit piece by piece, freed his arms, and lifted her again. This time, with no machine help, just pure human will. Step by step, he moved into the jungle. Sunlight hit his face, and fresh air filled his lungs. Ahead was the sound of a rescue beacon, faint but real. He didn't know if they would make it to the signal in time, but he knew one thing: he wasn't letting go. Not now, not ever. Asterisk sunlight hit Daron's face as he stepped out of the tunnel. But it didn't bring comfort. The jungle was still dangerous. And the enemy was not far behind. He carried Salari in his arms with no exosuit. No armor, no backup, just himself, a broken rifle, and a body pushed past its limit. His boots hit the muddy ground with slow, heavy steps. His back burned with pain, and every breath hurt his chest, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Ahead, a rescue beacon blinked softly, hidden on top of a hill covered with tall grass. If he reached it and activated the signal, there was a chance someone would come. Maybe a passing patrol ship, maybe a civilian shuttle. Anyone behind them, the sound of metal footsteps echoed. In the trees, the last of the mercenaries hadn't given up. They had tracked the explosion of the crystal and followed the tunnel system to the exit. Now, they were coming fast. Daron looked over his shoulder. Saw shadows moving, his heart pounded harder. "This is it," he whispered. "The final run." He looked at Salari in his arms. Her eyes were closed again, her body weak, her legs still bleeding, but she was alive. She had trusted him. And he wouldn't fail her now. Darren started to run. The hill wasn't far, maybe 100 meters. But every step felt like lifting a mountain. Branches slapped his face, roots tripped his feet, and rocks cut his hands, but he held her tightly and kept going. A laser shot zipped past his head. Burning a tree behind him, they were here. The last merc, a tall figure in black armor, with red eyes and a heavy cannon, peered from the trees. He shouted something in his strange language, then fired again. Daron rolled to the side, hitting the ground hard. He groaned, but didn't let Salari fall. He stood up again and kept running. His boots sliding in the mud, the beacon was blinking. Faster now, almost there. Another shot grazed his leg. Tearing through his pants and burning his skin, he screamed, but kept going. Salari opened her eyes for a moment and saw the blood. "Daron," she whispered, "please stop." "Just put me down." "No," he growled, "not when we're this close." The merc behind them reloaded his cannon, aiming for a clear shot. Daron reached the bottom of the hill and began to climb. The slope was steep, the mud slippery, and his muscles were almost done, but he used one hand to crawl, the other to keep her safe in his arms. Every inch felt like a mile. His lungs screamed for air. His vision blurred. The merc fired again, hitting a tree beside them. Flames burst out, setting the grass on fire. The smoke made it hard to see, but it also helped hide them. Daron crawled through the flames, his back burning, his clothes torn. Finally, he reached the top. The beacon stood like a silent tower. Blinking blue, he dropped to his knees and hit the activation button. A loud hum filled the air, and a red flare shot into the sky. Now they had to wait, but the merc wouldn't give them that time. The enemy climbed the hill, gun ready. Daron stood in front of Salari, arms wide, protecting her. He had no bullets left, just an old combat knife in his boot, but he would fight anyway. He had come too far to give up now. The merc raised his cannon. Darren pulled the knife and charged. The blade met armor. Sparks flew. and they wrestled on the hilltop. The cannon fired into the air. Missing both, Darren slashed at the joints, cutting wires, dodging punches. The Merc hit him hard in the side, sending him flying into the grass. Darren rolled, coughing blood, but he stood again, one last time. Then, a bright light filled the sky. A ship, sleek and silver, descended fast, engines roaring. It was a human patrol craft responding to the beacon. The Merc turned to run, but was hit by the ship's defense beam. In a flash, he disappeared in smoke. Darren collapsed to the ground, laughing weakly. "We made it," he whispered. Rescue soldiers rushed out, lifting him and Sailoree into the ship. Medics treated their wounds, gave them oxygen, and checked their vitals. As the ship rose into the sky, Darren looked down at the jungle, the place where he had nearly died, but also where he had proven who he was. He looked at Sailoree now, sleeping peacefully beside him. She was safe, and for the first time in days, so was he. Together, they had survived the fire, the traps, the enemies. Together, they had made it. But deep inside, Darren knew it wasn't the end. This journey had changed everything, and somewhere in the stars, their story was just beginning. The patrol ship soared high above the jungle. Its engines hummed softly as clouds passed over the cracked windows. Inside the medbay, Captain Darren lay on a recovery bed, wrapped in bandages and plugged into fluid tubes. Beside him, on a second bed, Sailoree rested under warm lights, her breathing calm, her body slowly healing. The rescue team had done everything they could. Now, all they could do was wait. Darren blinked his eyes open, pain rushing into his head. He saw white walls, silver tools, and a clean room that smelled like medicine. But more than anything, he saw her Sailoree alive, peaceful, and finally safe. A tired smile crept across his bruised face. A human medic walked in and checked his vitals. "You're lucky, Captain," she said. "Your suit's logs said you carried her over 6 kilometers on foot, with 2 cracked ribs and a broken ankle." "I made a promise," Darren whispered, voice dry but steady. The medic nodded, impressed but not surprised. "Command wants to talk to you after you recover," she said. "You broke orders, abandoned your team, and disobeyed extraction protocols. Are they angry?" Darren asked. "They were," she smiled, "until they saw what you did." Darren turned his head toward Sailoree, who stirred slightly. Her eyes opened slowly, soft and glowing violet. For a second, she looked confused, then calm. "You didn't?" "Leave," she whispered. "I told you I wouldn't," Darren said. "You're safe now." She reached out a hand, trembling, and he took it gently. Her fingers curled around his. "I've never felt safe before," she said, "not even on my own world." "You're not alone anymore," he answered, and he meant every word. Later that day, the ship landed at the human orbital base above the planet. News spread quickly about the alien girl with a tracker, the jungle full of traps, and the lone soldier who carried her for 3 days. Some called Darren a hero, others called him a fool, but none could deny what he did was human, brave, stubborn, and full of heart. In the following days, Sailoree was given her own room and full medical treatment. Scientists tried to ask her questions about the tracker, her species, and what the crystal really was. But she said little. She only spoke to Darren. She told him stories about her people, the empire that once enslaved them, and how she escaped. And Darren listened, not as a soldier, but as a friend. Weeks passed, and both of them healed slowly. They began to walk together through the gardens of the base, sometimes in silence, sometimes with laughter. She would lean on his arm. Still weak, but stronger every day, he would tell her jokes, mostly bad ones, but they made her smile. One morning, the human commander called Darren into his office. Sailoree walked beside him, holding his hand tightly. Inside, the commander stood with a serious face, a report in his hands. "Captain," he said. "We've reviewed your actions. I'm ready to face consequences." Duran replied, "You're not in trouble," the commander said with a small smile. "In fact, we're giving you a commendation." Duran blinked. "Surprised, you showed what it means to be human." The commander continued, "Not just a fighter but a protector, a leader, and a symbol." Salari stepped forward, her voice clear and soft. "He carried me when I begged him to leave me," she said. "He risked his life for someone not even from his world. He reminded me that kindness is stronger than power." The room went quiet. Even the commander looked moved. Outside the station's windows, the stars stretched far and wide, but for the first time, Darren didn't feel small among them. He had carried a life through fire and death, and that life had changed him in return. A few days later, a decision was made. Salari would not be sent to any lab or questioned further. Instead, she was granted protection under the Human Peace Treaty for refugees. She chose to stay with Duronat because she had nowhere else to go. But because she wanted to, he never asked her to, but she stayed anyway. Together, they worked to rebuild what was broken. Darren taught her human ways, how to eat strange Earth snacks, how to understand human humor, how to speak different languages. And she taught him her own culture songs, made from light, dances without sound. Stories passed down through starlight tattoos. One evening, as the base's lights dimmed and the artificial sunset turned the windows gold, Salari looked at him and said, "You didn't just carry me through the jungle, Darren, you carried me out of fear, out of hopelessness." He smiled, reaching for her hand. "And you carried me too." He said, "You gave me purpose." And that was how their story truly began. Not as a tale of war, not of enemies or empires, but of two lives that found each other in the darkest place and chose to walk into the light together. Because sometimes carrying someone isn't a burden. It's the most human thing you can do.